In this video, I want to showcase a method for chaining functions. Maybe you have a names column like here and you want to perform multiple transformations. And since we can write it in lowercase, we can trim, we can clean. And every time we perform an operation, we get a new step. And I don't want to have 3 steps that do a transformation to the same column. I want to chain that together. The normal way to do this is to literally chain the functions so that we say text lower and then text.trim and then text.clean. We're in the transform columns context, which means when we use a one argument function that takes a name, in this case as an argument, we don't have to use the each and the underscore, but when we start chaining the functions, we have to, because we actually have to explicitly tell what should this function use and what should this function use and this function. But otherwise we're going to end up with the same thing. But this quickly becomes annoying to look at. Here we have 3 closing parentheses. You have to write the new function here and remember the closing parentheses, and it gets a bit cumbersome, especially when you use more advanced or longer functions. If you always have functions that take one argument, the same argument, this name here, here in text lower we could add a culture, but we don't have to, so we're not going to. If all of the functions are one argument functions, then we can change them by creating a list of our operations and then looping over it. We could do this. Then we want to create a list of all of our functions, which I'm going to copy paste. And then we don't want the underscore and we don't want the parentheses because we want the function itself. So we separate them with a comma, and then we wrap it in a list. We can't directly use this list in its current version. We can't say func list underscore and say, well, actually, I want you to go through this list one function at a time and grab the current item and perform the operation, because it's now trying to interpret the entire list as a function. Instead, because we have a list that we want to loop through, conveniently we have a function that does that, List.Accumulate. We will use that to go through our list. What is our list? We want to go through the func list, our seed. Our seed is the original value, which in this case is the names column. And then our function, as always, is state, current, which goes toward. We want to extract the function in our list, which is represented by current, and we want to apply that to the state. And then we end up with the same result. We can always expand this list, which is then a tiny bit easier. That's not going to work. I need to output a delimiter. Maybe splitter text by any delimiter, because this is a closure function, because we need to wrap that in a list, and that then outputs a list. But yeah, so you need to make sure that the functions are the same in the sense that here they take one argument, which is then the text that we're transforming. We can also add our own functions. Here I'm going to cheat by copying it in. It extracts the last name, which it goes into the name, checks if there's a space. If there isn't a space, then it extracts a name because you don't have a last name. But if there is a space, it will grab the last value. And if you have 2 names, it will still grab the last value, which is why I say grab the 0th index where you count from the end. And then we can input this into our list functions, and then we end up with what we expect. So it doesn't really make sense to use text lower here, but I wanted to show something quickly. So yep,